And welcome to another happiness class. Do check out previous shows at bigquestionsanswer.com. This is a weekly thing, happens every Thursday, 7 to 8 p.m. This week's show is focused on success. What do we really want? What is it that success means? What is it that drives us so hard to work for it? What's this mystical thing that we really need deep down? Second half is, as usual, ask anything you want. I call it a life Q&A, ask anything about life. My guest will be Farmer Salim. He was on the phone a minute ago. He's rushing here. Hopefully he'll be here and he'll bust into the show any minute, as he usually does, that kind of character he is. Anyway, this show is based on happiness truth using religion, science, and logic. So there are ancient truths out there that are really helpful to us, but everything I'm going to talk about is based on psychology and science and logic and stuff like that. So you don't have to have a faith to believe this stuff. Alrighty, let's get going. So, first thing is, why do we need to feel successful? So, there's a deep answer. There's kind of like some people, it's like I'm talking about the feeling or rather than the need. So it's not like a bunch of stuff that you need, because clearly people can have loads of stuff and still have this urge for feeling successful. You can be a millionaire, I know millionaires and stuff like that, and they still don't feel successful. So what is this need? It's in our nature. Here's a deep answer. It's in our nature to do increasingly good things. And I'm going to explain why this is kind of how we know this, right? Which is part of our inherent attraction to God. So it's going even deeper there. Our ego tells us we need things, as in material things, to feel successful, but that does not make us feel good. Right? So there are loads of people who keep having more and more stuff, but it never makes you feel good. And so here's the science, the logic bit, right? We know, psychologists have known for a very long time, that the thing that makes you feel good is meaning. And you'd be like, hang on a minute, I thought I need a fancy car to feel good. So you've just been sold on by advertising on materialism. So that's not true. Okay, we feel good, and if you kind of wipe out this idea that you've been sold, then you kind of remember, like, oh, I feel good when I do good things, right? If you look about like a hero in a movie, it's not the guy who just bought more stuff. You're not impressed by that person. In fact, you're probably kind of feeling sorry for them. I remember watching a documentary on Michael Jackson. He just goes into a shop and he's only got 10 seconds to buy stuff because he's always hounded by his fans, and he just goes and buys lots of things, and you kind of feel sorry for that kind of person. The cool person that you watch in a movie that does something that is a hero or a heroine is the person who risks all and does something meaningful, does something great. Oh, nice background. Let me just get Salim in. What is that? Is that a real background? Is that a real background?
It's virtual background.
Oh, I was thinking I was going to see something nice from your farm. I thought that might have
Oh,
been your farm.
assalamu alaikum. How are you?
What Islam, peace be upon
Assalamu
you.
alaikum,
I'm good.
everybody. Sorry I'm late.
All right, so we're talking about success, and I don't know. Can you see on? Have you got a laptop, or what is it that you're using? You're using a laptop.
Computer.
Computer. So can you see that thing, my little summary? It's in why do we need to feel successful? And I'm giving quite a deep answer. I would say it's in our nature to do increasingly good things, and not just good things. And it's in our and it's a reflection of our inherent attraction towards God, which again is a very deep answer, right? Um, and our ego tells us something else. It says, oh, we just need more stuff, more things to feel good. But that never seems to work. All the people I know, that you just get more and more stuff, and you just get used to it, and it doesn't quite make you happier. But um, we've always known, psychologists have always known, not the general population, that it's not stuff, it's meaning. And what could be more meaningful than a relationship with God? that's the only thing that doesn't disappear. Collecting stuff, you're not going to take it with you when you die. But I don't know. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Yes. Well, I mean, I kind of agree with you that modern materialism. So our Western media and our Western culture tells us, like you say, that we need to collect stuff. We need to be materialistic in order to feel successful. Capitalists will say, well, the more money you've got, that will make you feel successful. All these self-help books, it's all about, these kind of materialistic capitalist areas. Are we trying to feel good in front of our parents or our near ones? Are we influenced by our kids, our local community, what they think is successful? Or, like you say, is it through virtue, through morality and the eyes of God? I.e., why do we need to feel successful? We need to feel that we have integrity, a sense of dignity, self-dignity. That's what I think.
Yeah, so success is a kind of story you tell yourself about yourself, and you can't lie to yourself. So what is that story you're going to tell yourself about? So I was just talking about in Hollywood movies, who's the hero? It's the guy who did something sort of great sacrifice for some great good. Do you know what I mean? And you like that. People watch movies and they love that. Now, what's the alternative? It's like I was talking about Michael Jackson. When he was alive, there were documentaries on him, and he would go into a shop and he would spend $100,000 in 5 minutes, and he would have 5 minutes maximum because he would have howling fans outside. So he didn't really get time to shop. Yeah. And we would feel sorry for Michael Jackson. It's like, what kind of life is that? What kind of person is that? That he just goes into a shop, buys lots of stuff. And so if we maybe look at ourselves or step back and go, what kind of life are we living? Just buying stuff, collecting stuff. It's a bit embarrassing almost, you know. And the other thing we're being sold on is that if only we could get a little bit more comfort, or if we could get that job that allows us to be more free, right? But the problem with that mindset is that such people are willing to sacrifice their principles of freedom, like doing the right thing. So they'll do a horrible job that's really meaningless, so to eventually have that freedom. And I'm telling you that if you keep sacrificing your freedom or your principles, then when you finally get that sense of, oh, I got that job where I'm the boss and everybody has to listen to me and I'm free finally, actually you'll never be free because you become so weak by then. I don't know if that makes any sense. So if you don't practice freedom every day, you become too weak to really practice it. So I know lots of people are really well off. They're not really free. All they end up doing is watching TV by themselves in one corner because sure, you made loads of money, right? But then you don't know how to be yourself anymore. There's a great thing. There's one of my favorite movies, V for Vendetta. Ever heard of it? Seen it?
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, and the guy goes, one of the main characters, he's a British guy who's playing it, and he goes, we hide behind masks so long that we eventually forget who we are. Right? And so you're not free if you don't practice freedom every day, you can't be free. Don't think a job is going to buy you freedom. Okay? And we were born free is the last thing I want to say. Look at kids. Look how free they look. They don't need loads of money to eventually be free. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right that we do end up going down that path that society demands from us, keeping up with the Joneses, and our self-worth, feeling good about ourselves through how many followers we have on social media or through our relationships, through, like you say, our jobs. We want to have influence, we want to have power. Some people want wealth. and you're questioning whether these things actually do make you feel successful. For women, it's going to be slightly different. For men, it's going to be for men, it's slightly different in that men would have to may think, I need to be a provider. If I'm providing, I feel a self-worth, and then I feel successful. Or in the eyes of like your children, you want to be a role model. You want them to love you.
So how much stuff do you need? And actually, is that really being a role model, collecting more and more stuff and being a prisoner of your wealth? That's not, I would say that's a negative role model, although on the surface it looks like a good role model.
So it's interesting because it's not all societies that we become collectors. They have quite a minimalist
Yes.
Philosophy in Scandinavian countries, and hence IKEA. Where we don't clutter, we don't fill our houses with clutter in the Scandinavian countries, and they're the happiest people in the world apparently. So all this stuff that we have to buy and maintain, it doesn't do anything for our mental health.
I thought you were going to talk about Africa because both me and you've been to places in Africa and they don't seem to have stuff and they seem to be so much happier. And I was just talking to a friend who's been just traveling different places, part of an NGO, and he just loves being every time he goes to Africa, any place in Africa, he just loves being there. And it's not about the things, you don't, the person who's barefooted on walking barefoot on a sandy beach, you don't feel sorry for them. You go, oh, poor guy, he's got no shoes. You almost feel envious. It's like, oh, look how free he is. You don't need stuff to be free.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, you definitely feel much more alive without these encumbrances. Is that a word?
That's an interesting point, isn't it? It's like sometimes when you're so padded up with you're so bubble wrapped safety, all that kind of stuff with wealth and stuff, you stop being alive. You almost need that sense of danger and lack of protection and lack of security to actually feel alive. So that's an interesting point, actually. Let's go on to the next point. What kind of success makes us happiest? So here's my quick summary. We enjoy okay, making funny sounds. Okay, we enjoy regular, small, positive action. So this is going to sound boring, but this is kind of, I'm going to talk about how important this is and how the opposite of what we think makes us happy is really bad for us, okay, which is the big stuff, okay? So we enjoy regular, small, positive actions. The small things are the big things because they are the less show-offy and so deeper things. So they're less opportunity for getting confused with being a show off, getting ourselves confused. And so it actually ends up being the deeper stuff. Okay. And they're the things that make, and you need those small regular things every day in your life, not once in a blue moon. So I could go on about how I'm a big enemy of these sort of big actions, which are an enemy of your happiness. But any thoughts at first, Salim?
Yeah, very much so. So this reminds me of a verse from scripture, and it's kind of a summary of all the scriptures, whether they're Buddhist, Stoicism, the Bible, and I'll just say what it is. And it says, "Surely men, in the name I see, surely men who submit themselves to God, and women who submit themselves to Him, believing men and believing women, obedient men, obedient women, truthful men, truthful women."
All sorts of funny stuff is happening, and there's eggs have turned up. well, oh, okay. I think his connection's gone. That's what's happened. Okay, he'll be back in a bit. All right. So we're looking forward to hearing what he had to say about that. So okay, so I'm going to talk about why I'm such a big enemy of these sort of big actions. Okay, so why one reason why big actions are an enemy of progress. Okay, because when we aim for them, we actually stop doing anything. We say one day we're going to do this thing that makes us successful, and that thing has to be huge. And so basically success always gets put off until tomorrow. You want to feel successful every day, and it doesn't take a big thing to feel good about your life, right? It's a shame if it takes a big thing to feel good about your life. And as I said before, meaningful things are the things that make us happy. So one of the reasons why we think big things are the things that make us feel good is because of advertising. We need to buy increasingly bigger and bigger, more and more expensive things to feel good. And so we're sold on this idea that if only we had really big, expensive things, we could finally be happy. So try to kind of take off that idea, right? So big things are an enemy of success because you're putting this huge wall in front of you that you have to jump over to finally feel successful. And then also, you can always get used to whatever you have. So sorry, my throat's suddenly gone dry. Maybe it's your turn to take over. What were you saying a minute ago?
So when you say we do small positive actions,
Hmm.
I mean, there was a verse that in scripture, and it talks about, I'm not sure if I should paraphrase it or just read it out as it is, but basically it's about people who submit themselves to God.
Hmm.
So submit yourself, i.e. you do,
Let go of your
you're being
ego and listen.
yeah, so you submit yourself,
Hmm.
that you believe in a creator, you're obedient to that creator, you're truthful, you're steadfast and humble, which is what you're talking about here, and then you give to others, give for charity, and then you fast, you guard your chastity, and you pray and remember the creator. That's what the creator says. Though if you do those things, that will lead you to paradise, nirvana, and that's what will make you happy. And you
Hmm.
mention them here because that's what success is.
Sure. Yeah. So I know that
So
particular quote you had in mind, and a lot of it is metaphorical as well. So there's one thing about, like, for example, fasting, and it's supposed to be a metaphor for self-sacrifice. Like, you would give up something that you're allowed to have, but you're going to give it for other people. And there's those basically different levels of, it's called, you can call it belief, but also feeling good about yourself, right? So there's kind of, on the surface, you can know something is true, but to feel it and live that truth is a completely different thing. And so that's kind of one of the many stages. I think there were like 8 stages or something, that particular quote that you had. um so I get what you're saying, and that's kind of, those are different levels of success, aren't they? Like, you can know something is true, and you can say, oh, that's true, and that kind of helps you, kind of, it's, truth is kind of a map of the world, your understanding of your universe or something, right? But if you kind of only know it as a fact, but you don't live by it, you don't feel it's true, you don't feel it in your bones, then you don't this kind of, that's kind of success or appreciation of the world is only academic. You want it to be something you feel in your bones every day. You go, yes, this is the truth. This is the way to live my life. Basically, doing good things. Okay, and whatever those good things are, that's success, I suppose. Success is not an idea, it's something you feel as well. I don't
yeah,
know.
very much so. I mean,
Yeah.
there's always a number one bestseller that's about self help,
Hmm.
and various people have trademarked different frameworks and methods of self help and being successful. But as you say, the underlying principles are these 7 items. For example, you talked about being humble and becoming less show offy. What does humble mean? Humble means that you can take a hit it means you've got grit and resilience, because everyone's stepping all over you because you're humble, but you can handle it, you can take it, and it makes you stronger. And the more humble you become, the more successful you become.
Yeah. And actually,
So
that's
that,
kind
you know,
of go
that's,
on, go on.
well,
Yeah. So
you know, that's
go on, go on. You go. Go on.
no, I mean that just carry on. I mean, I was going to talk about a different point. So, have you got anything to say about being
Well,
humble?
about the humble thing was kind of one. I think that one of the biggest things that when we're nowadays we do big things to show off, and we don't admit it to ourselves, and then that makes success really difficult for us. We never ever feel successful, because as soon as you start showing off, you become captive to other people's opinions. So that's why I'm a massive enemy almost of big things. It's like, do really small things that you can't tell anybody about. It's kind of like this beautiful thing that I've been brought up with, which is when you do a good deed, do it so secretly that your left hand doesn't know that your right hand is giving. You might have heard of that one. So
That's
yeah,
interesting. So, does that mean that is that related to vanity and
yeah,
showing off
and
and
yeah,
buying luxury goods and things?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And maybe that doesn't mean don't aim for big things. In fact, all big things, even if you want to do great and amazing things, not for your vanity, but for the betterment of the world, in reality, to do those things, there's a million steps that nobody sees. And it doesn't just happen, you know,
Yeah,
it
but
takes many, many years. Yeah.
if through my hard work I earned, you know, a decent amount of money, and I can
Yeah.
afford a nice suit or a nice car or a nice house, then can I not? Should I not be, you know, getting those nice things?
Mm. I think don't be captive to it, is what I mean, right? So get something practical, like just stuff you just enough that you need it, but don't become like trapped by it, because that's a never-ending cycle. Do you know what I mean? Don't
Yeah, but you don't
be
want to be
like, yeah,
on the other hand, you don't want to be miserly, right? You don't want to be your hand chained to you. You know,
yeah.
you want to be
So
you
it's
want to spend.
as I say, practical. So it's like don't be so if you want to be more useful to society, or like I buy lots of stuff, technology, so I can do a better show, so I can be more useful. That's all it is. So if I buy a more expensive car because I need to get around, like I don't really get around, I do things online, right? But if it helps me become a more useful, productive person, sure, use that more expensive car because it won't break down and stuff like that. But really be honest with yourself about that. Like, don't buy that car unless you really need it. It's not about, yeah, do you know what I mean? It's about just if you really it's like if you want to be free, you don't make excuses to buy more expensive things. You just want to be free. You buy things that help you do cool things for the world. That's it. Simple.
Understood. So when it comes to our partners and having
Yep.
a trophy husband or a trophy wife,
Sure. Yep.
and having lots of partners, you know what? He's
Yep.
got loads of partners.
Yep.
He's successful, or
Yeah.
she's successful. Well, you know, what's your view on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's just part of materialism, isn't it? It's like we want more stuff. We want a bigger house. Want more admirers online, real ones, stuff like that. It's just part of the same thing.
Okay.
What do you think? We use people as material objects to be traded. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, you don't just have these lots of multiple partners and all this kind of stuff. What you do is like, oh, I'm bored of that one. Let's get the next one. Because that's how, as soon as we see people as things to show off with, and then they disappoint us, which they will, because they're only human beings. They're not. they're not kind of some weird figment of your imagination, they are going to disappoint you. Then you're going to get tired of them, and then you're going to trade them for something better, just the next shiny thing. That's it. And you'll never be happy. What do you think?
Well, I think that I get a sense of success when with with children. That I've got a child, I've got two children, I've got three children. I feel successful. So I think it's about striking the right balance, about having a partner who that will make me feel successful, who loves you, who cares for you. You're proud if you have lots and lots of children, perhaps, or two children. So it's about getting that balance, I think.
Yeah, I've been watching this series about Prophet Jacob. He had 12 kids, and who mostly caused him misery, except for one, really. So I'm not sure if it's quality or quantity. Who knows?
And he was a prophet.
Yeah. And if people don't know the story, 11 of his kids tried to kill one of his kids, and the best one, sort of thing, the nice one. That's kind of a summary of the story. So
Joseph's
yeah,
amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
yeah, Joseph, that guy. Yeah. So yeah, let's move on to the last bit, which is what's the easiest way to become successful? Because success seems to be this kind of thing that's always out of reach. And I'm gonna give the simple answer, I think, which is working together in doing good deeds. Right. So we like being together, not being lonely. Okay, that's very much part of who we are. We we really suffer, and it's like one of the biggest killers in the West is loneliness. So don't underestimate being together and doing good things. Good things is kind of a summary of what psychologists like Viktor Frankl has said. Meaning. If you don't like the word meaning, is confusing for you, just do good things. Okay, and don't do things that are about showing off, because that robs you of your freedom. Don't do it. Okay, and do things that you can do every day so you can feel good every day, not one day or tomorrow. Okay, so one of the reasons why we struggle with this, it should be really simple, is because we've fallen for advertising. As I said before, we don't need lots of stuff, we don't need big stuff. That's just your advertising. If you go to every time I've had my happiest memories, okay, are really simple things and really simple lifestyles, having really simple food and stuff like that. So so earlier on, I'll give you a quote, that Salim was talking about. um I'll give it, it's quite a long one. I've got it somewhere. So I'll put it on the non-live chat. So I've got Alika, who's a regular here, and she was asking, she guessed it was a verse of the Holy Quran. Nice one, Alika. And so I will give that quote and kind of the slightly deeper meaning behind it as well. So cool. Thanks for that question. Any thoughts, Salim, about the easiest way of finding success? Do you agree, disagree with, or any issues that you can imagine people having with that definition?
So firstly, the verse is 33, 36,
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Al-Azhar. And I think that you have nailed it in summary, of that be good, be righteous. All scripture tells us
33.
the same.
Go on.
And there's a verse that says, in the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, surely success does come to the believers. So you have to believe in a creator, who are humble in their prayers, which we talked about just now. But not just that, but they're humble when they pray, when they think, when they reflect. And prayer can be through teaching others, helping others, working for the welfare of others. It doesn't need to be formal prayers. Who shun all that which is vain, who are active in paying zakat or charity, and who guard their chastity, except from their wives or what their right hand possesses, for then they are not to be blamed. But those who seek anything beyond that are transgressors. And then lastly, it talks about, or the last two things are, who are watchful of their trusts and covenants, and who are strict in the observance of their prayers. So that's in a nutshell, what how to be successful. I hope that makes sense.
I suppose one meaning of success, and why people might ask, what's praying got to do with feeling successful, or being humble? What's that got to do with being humble in your prayers? What's that got to do with being successful? It's the realization. So, why do we really struggle with being successful? Is because, in short, we're trying to be something really important. And if we realize we're not really important and it's kind of a pointless activity trying to be more important, in fact, that actually makes you more miserable. Trying to be more important than other people actually separates you from other people. And the only thing that actually makes you happy is being close to people. So anyway, so being more important is really pointless activity. So when you realize that you need to be more connected with God, or being in line with whatever God's plan is, and God's plan is usually really, really beautiful. It's like to do good things, to make the world a better place. God's a beautiful creator. Look at the universe, right? So if we're more in line with that, and we're more humble as well, that means we kind of melted and there's no ego, then you're just going to feel great and successful every day. You're going to be basically in sync with nature. So that's kind of a little explanation why I think that being humble in your prayers makes you instantly feel successful. Let's go on to the next question. What's this comment from Alika? Alika says, Khalid, so does that make Muhammad's word a decree of God? I don't know what that means. Yeah, so no, not every. So I mean, I'll give a quick answer. This seems to be like a theological question. Um, not everything Prophet Muhammad says is a decree of God. He even says that himself. He basically, it's whatever is in the Quran, which is revealed as a message from God, a direct message from God, not just like anything Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was saying. So that's the short answer. Hope that helps, Salika. Okay, so let's get to a new question. By the way, if you do have a question, I kind of about life, then we'll spend like Alika, if you got sort of a question about life, or even you, Salim, then we can discuss that for 15 minutes or something. Oh, no, sorry, 10 minutes each one, right? So I've got a bunch of questions lined up already. Let's do this one for now. Let's get rid of some extra spaces there so you can see all in one go. Yeah, if you got anything that kind of really affects lots of your life personally, yeah. But I don't really spend too much time on what's it called, theological questions, but I appreciate your questions anyway. When I say theological, kind of that's just a lot about like you know how do you describe it? Sort of things that don't have a practical value in our lives. Sort of, I want something that go like, oh, you can do this action to make yourself feel better or something. So anyway, I'll quickly look at this as well. Wu kind of finally understood that the ego is in the way for happiness. Yes, great, thank you. Yes, that's very true. The ego gets in the way of our happiness. The more we listen to God instead of our ego, which is actually a trick, it always tricks us into doing short-term happiness things. That way, you actually find more happiness by basically listening to God, who wants the best for us. So, anyway, thank you very much, Alika, for that. How do you hold onto your dreams even when others doubt you? So we can see very few people really follow their dreams because they're so, in short, they're really scared of other people's opinions. So how do you hold on to your dreams? And so the short answer is, if you fear God, you can either fear God or fear everyone. That's the really short answer. And let me kind of explain that. Um, Fearing God, what that really means is, because God is in all the different religions, as far as I know, is a really kind God, and you can see God is kind by looking at Salim's background. I think that's actually your farm, isn't it? Is that a photo of your farm? Because I saw the eggs.
Yeah, it's a photo just around the corner.
Right, yeah. So you can see just looking at nature how kind God is. Like God just gives us so much stuff. Sometimes we forget that when we live in the cities, right? We don't see enough of it, right? Nature. Um, but God is incredibly kind and wants so much good for us and creates so much lovely stuff in nature and food and whatever for us, right? So God is kind. So when we fear God, we fear kind of upsetting God, somebody who we love, right? So when we care about that, it really means you're really only concerned with doing the right thing. That's it. Okay. But when you fear God, who's all powerful, nothing else matters. Everything else becomes insignificant. Like, what's that person's opinion? I don't care, because I only care what God thinks. God is all powerful. Everybody else is quite irrelevant. But as soon as you ignore God, then you become basically a slave to everybody's opinions. That's it. So that's the easy. You need something big to eclipse this um this thing in human nature. Because we're social beings, we really care about other people's opinions. So there's a psychological fact, which is that most people prefer to be miserable than to stand out. So how do we overcome that part of human nature? This is what psychologists tell us, right? Most people rather be miserable than stand out. But we need to stand out to follow our dreams. Our dreams are not to be normal, to do just what everybody else is doing, which is the reason why everybody else is doing whatever they're doing, because they're doing kind of boring stuff because they don't want to stand out, right? Okay, if you want to follow your dreams, you're going to stand out. You're going to have to stand out. How do you overpower this thing about being a human being and needing, fitting in? You need to care about something that's far more powerful, and that is God. I kind of repeated that a couple of times. So any thoughts?
Yeah, very much so. So I think there's a lot of overlap in what some of the previous questions and what we're talking about here. I think that God's created you for a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. Everyone's unique, and so let's hold that thought about our purpose and what we're here for. And then when we go back to people who submit themselves to His will, so let's say my child dies. I say, okay, that's God's will. Or let's say I have a heart attack. Okay, that's my God's will. Or let's say I went bankrupt, or these issues, that legal challenges, health challenges that we face in life. If you kind of say, okay, that's fine, that's God's will, then there's kind of a load off. Okay, I've gone bankrupt. That's a load off. Because you're going with God's will, and you don't take it. You can handle it. And the more you can handle, the more suffering or pain you can handle with a smile and kind of shrug it off, the more successful you'll be. So let's hold that thought. Now, let's say my desire is for a fast car or a big house or a helipad, or children or a nice partner or these kind of things. But actually, those things, only God knows about the future and the past and everything. So what I might think is good for me, my desires, may not actually be good for me. So what you have to do is you have to align your desires with what God wants. And we've talked about what God wants: being good, being righteous, welfare for others, be humble. So if you align yourself with those desires, then you give up your desires and let them. So then you are submitting to His will and going with what He wants from you. And then things start happening for you. Then your dreams start coming true. Then the things that you wanted but you gave up on, what's really best for you starts kicking in. So when it talks about how do you hold on to your dreams when others doubt you, your dreams need to be aligned with God's vision for you, and only you know what your skills and faculties and what you're good for. Yeah. So in summary, I think shock and awe, minds and hearts, but shock and awe through tea parties and loving and kindness and acts of kindness and being the best human being you can be. That will kickstart relationships, your social life, doing stuff for others. I agree. Yeah, that's it.
I like
Really.
this idea about kind of submitting to God's will and knowing, okay, and this idea of what is our purpose and all these things. Like we're not always aware of our purpose because we mix it up with our sort of short-term egoistic plans. So we think we make our purpose to buy an expensive car, which is a silly purpose, right? It's not a purpose of life really. And so I think to summarize it, so we can get on to the next question, there's a great movie called Evan Almighty. Ever seen it? He builds an ark. It's quite funny. Anyway, and so just one really short quote. Basically, the guy, he's a politician and he's got big plans. And he's telling God, who's Morgan Freeman for the second time. Morgan Freeman loves to be God in movies. He plays it well. And he's saying, I've got these plans and God is watching him in the form of Morgan Freeman, and he's just laughing. And it's, in summary, is we have our plans when we think we're so smart and we think we know what we're doing, and God is like, God knows much better what will make us happy, and it's just kind of ridiculous, And I think there's apparently it's a quote from the Talmud, which is a scripture in the Jewish scripture, which is, "Man plans, God laughs." So I have to Google that. I'm not sure if that's true, but it kind of makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, so we have our dreams. Maybe they're not very smart dreams. Sometimes is a quick summary of that. Okay, next one. This is a really popular thing people think and really worth discussing. Let's get rid of that space. I like it to look nice. All right, okay. So are we happier if we live in the now? Okay. And my short answer is ignoring everything, because that's what living in the now is, ignoring everything, our past, our mistakes, our plans to make the future a better place, the world a better place by living in the now, okay, is what I would call a buzzword philosophy. Just lots of buzzwords that don't really help you, okay? It's ignoring everything that teaches us how to make good choices, and it's a philosophy for the selfish, because if you read Eckhart Tolle and all these people who love to talk about living in the now, they don't talk about what you should do for other people. It's all about me, me, me. It's like, oh, don't worry about your mistakes, just forget about it, just live in the now, don't worry about the future or making the world a better place for other people. Just forget about it. Just live in the now, So it's not about responsibility, which is what all the ancient religions would actually talk about. That's how they're really different to these new age philosophies of me, me, me. And they're really, just to finish off, the reason why they're popular is because they're popular to a sick society that is about individualism and me, 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 in a society that is so sick that one of the main causes of death are suicide, because people hate themselves so much now, or they can't stand their lives anymore. So that's just my thoughts about the living in the now, my problem with it. Your thoughts?
So I've got a question for Alika.
Yeah.
Who is your role model in terms of success? In Islam, the role model for women is obviously Jesus' mum, Mary. She in the Quran it says she's your role model. She and I think it was Pharaoh's wife.
Yeah, but the higher one is Mary. Yeah. The
Yeah.
weakest example is Pharaoh's wife. Yeah.
So yeah, that's two examples. So I'm just interested in who are our role models for being successful. With regards to are we happy? Are we happy if we live in the now? And carrying these burdens of the past. Well, God's all forgiving. So no matter how many times I've been naughty and how many times I've been disobedient to him and all my like history of stuff, behavioral deficiencies, he's all forgiving. So that's cool. That means that is like a reset button. That means doesn't mean that I can just carry on doing, but it's one less burden for me. Now, what are we happy if we live in the now? I think that the prophets, they would have sleepless nights worrying about others. I mean, do we in this modern age, am I worried about, like you say, myself, or do I have sleepless nights because the coral reefs are, dying and there are people starving in Africa? Do I have sleepless nights about that? Do I spend my time and my energy and my money trying to think of better their welfare and praying for them? Or do I spend it all on, a nice new coat for myself or a nice new leash for my dog? And so being a Muslim or being a Christian or being a religious, moral, ethical person is very hard. It's not easy. It's not just a case of, well, I'm going to sign up to be, a religious person. It's well hard. It's like becoming Olympic gold medalist. And by order of magnitude, the more you achieve in that area, to get to the next rung, it's even harder. So we talk about our responsibilities to our parents, to our neighbors, to our office, to people in my work, to the people, it's just so hard to. And I think that what happens is you get sorted out in life. God wants to test us and see, right, well, which ones of you are going to be like giving charity and being honest, and he'll weed out all the weeds, and I'll be down, over there. Khalid and you guys will be up there, and that's the purpose of life, is to filter the good and the bad to see that's why we've got the gift of choice, whether we do the right thing or the wrong thing. So are we happier if we live in the now? I think that, again, when you get to the end of life, you want to look back and have the people who are my role models, they've got a twinkle in their eye, and they've got not much materially, but they've got a twinkle in their eye. They've lived a life having worth lived in the service of others, and their level of serenity and contentment I could only dream of. So that's my answer of whether we should live in the now or not.
So thank you, Salim, for always putting yourself down. Salim's always doing nice stuff for people, by the way. But anyway, let me see. So yeah, I think you were talking about the responsibility weeds people out. I'm not sure if that's the primary purpose. I think the primary purpose, God wants you to succeed as well. And when it's and I like the analogy of an Olympic medalist, because like, wouldn't you want, I think there's a lot of fun in being an Olympic medalist, but it's hard. Do you know what I mean? So you strive a lot. Yeah. You commit, you focus on one thing, and you become really good at it, and you get a lot of fun, rather than being the person who's eating chips watching the medalist on TV, right? And that's all they do, let's just say, right? So I think rather than living in the now, which is actually a life people need to live in the now if they don't like their lives. But if you really care about your life, then you're going to learn all the lessons you can from the past. You are going to care about the past. You're not going to regret the past. You're going to be like, kind of, you don't really regret it, because everybody makes mistakes, but you go, right, how can I learn from that? Do you know what I mean? People, and you get really excited, like, oh, I learned another lesson. Life's going to be better tomorrow because I learned a lesson. So yeah, something like that. And by the way, I want to quickly say that's not Buddhism, by the way. Living in the now is not Buddhism, it's Buddhism, because a lot of people think that, because I believe in all the ancient religions, and I think they all are in line with each other. So a quick kind of thing for people to notice is that when you hear all these quotes, the so-called Buddhist quotes, you will never see, it's actually, you hardly ever see it's actually from Buddha. Buddha, his quotes are really deep and complicated. The simple things, living in the now, they're just like Eckhart Tolle and people like him who are just making stuff up in his name. So do watch out for that. If you want a real Buddhist quote, like real quote from Buddha, just search that. Anyway, let's move on to the last one. I think that's the last question. Does chasing happiness make us miserable? So you hear a lot about this. I've heard a lot that people who chase happiness actually make happiness harder to get, and I agree in many ways, because the way people chase happiness is so wrong nowadays, that basically I agree. And basically happiness, and again I've said this many times, comes from, according to psychologists, is not some spiritual mumbo jumbo, let's say. It's comes from meaning and doing all good actions. Well, good actions are meaningful actions. Okay. Trying to get happy directly by buying stuff gets you a small high, like, oh, look at me, I've got a new iPhone or something, but mostly gives you more misery, as you don't benefit from the side effects of the good action. So what is meaningful and what religion basically teaches you to do are things like, oh, be nice to your neighbor, be giving, be generous, and stuff like that. And when you do that, you get all these great side effects of like connecting with each other. So there's a psychological experiment that's a very simple one, where you can either buy yourself a coffee or buy somebody else a coffee. Okay, that's being generous, buying somebody else a coffee. Guess what makes you far more happier, according to these psychologists or sociologists, whatever they're called, right? Giving the coffee. Why would that be a surprise? Like, do you really need another coffee? Because I've had millions of coffees in my lifetime, maybe 1,000, I don't know, but loads of them. I just don't need yet another one. But if I give coffee to somebody, that's just going to, if you think about practically, that's just going to be a really interesting experience. Like, oh, hey stranger, can I buy you a cup of coffee? Like, think about the kind of interaction, the smiles, and the amazing experience that would be, and how much you remember that, and like how weird that was, and they'll be like, why are you doing that? And the amazing conversations that would come out of it. Anyway, so that's what I think. Chasing happiness directly makes you miserable. Chasing happiness by doing good things, that gives you lasting happiness. Your thoughts, Salim?
So the previous question is linked, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
do I mean, I'll give up the now and trade it off for the future. In the future, for me, I'm thinking about the long grass. I'm thinking about after I'm dead, like
Mm.
heaven and eternity and paradise. And there's a phrase that's often used. It talks about gardens beneath which rivers flow. And for me, what are gardens, beautiful gardens, that are the good deeds that we've done in this life. So the more good stuff you've done in this life, the more kickback you'll get in the next. So again, this is related to submitting the now, submitting your desires and what you want now, so that you can get it kickback, the bonus points or blessings, as some people would call them, in the next life. So, does chasing happiness make you miserable? I think you might be a little bit miserable, but you can take it, you can handle it, um, and so that's what
I'm
I'm
gonna
thinking.
jump in. I'm gonna correct you in my opinion, right? I don't think that you sacrifice when you sacrifice today, you only get happiness in the next life. So when you sacrifice, you're actually leading a more meaningful life. You will instantly feel good about the narrative you have in your head about yourself. Because without that meaning, and this is a weird thing that people really struggle with, they think, what is meaning? What can I do with meaning? Well, what can you do with a more comfortable seat in a car? These are all stupid things. The things that, if you really look at your life, the things that you love, the things that you look back and when you had a great time in a holiday, it had some sort of meaning, had some sort of interesting experience. So yeah, I don't think doing something difficult today means you don't get anything good today. It's not. It's both. You get both. Um, it's you live a better life this life, and if you live selfishly, you create hell for yourself in this life, and you're experiencing it. You so the next life is just a more sensitive awareness of the things you did in this life. That's all. So um yeah, so I think living a meaningful, a good life this life, that's good. You only, it's a win-win. You win this life, win in the next. That's my thoughts. What do you think?
I think there's a little bit of selfishness there. So if you say, "Oh, I'm going to pray for paradise," and some people would say, well, that's asking for yourself. That's a bit selfish. What the Sufis or the mystics, they used to say, well, we're not going to ask for paradise. What we would rather is the pleasure of the creator and experiences of the creator are much more important to us than um, paradise. There was a story of a saint in the Islamic history from about 1100, and it goes along the lines of some ruffians kicked his door in, and they dragged him down the stairs. And every time his head hit the corner of the stair, it really hurt. But he said that I felt the closest to God at that time, and it's a bit weird because what he was thinking, I think what is inferring is that I God is watching and I'm suffering, but inside I'm never been happier. So there's a bit of a weird thing going on there. I'm not sure if I expressed it right. What do you think, Khalid?
Mm. I totally agree. I think we have a lot of conversations off the internet, and we were talking about this. Like, um, I look for the opportunities to a bit more suffering. Um, and why is that? I think it's kind of, it separates you from the world a little bit, and you're closer to God and closer to nature or something like that. So
Well, yeah,
yeah, I get that.
if you're getting up at sort of 3 a.m. to pray for others, and that's suffering. If you're fasting from the morning to night for a month or 40 days, that's taking a hit. That's painful suffering. When you're being humble and being crushed by others and just taking it, that's hard. When you're speaking the truth in a court of law that is going against you, that's hard. When you're being checked out by some girls, or you're checking out someone of people of the opposite sex, and you say, no, you know what, I'm going to guard my chastity, I'm going to forego that. That's hard. It's easy to submit, right? Well, not submit to them, I mean. So it's hard, all of this taking hits and suffering. waking up early and doing for others without any reward for yourself, speaking the truth, being honest, being
I
righteous,
think
being...
it's hard. It's hard at first, and then it becomes you can't live without it. That's my experience, and I wouldn't like people. There are loads of people who wake up really in the morning because they're really excited to get up, and actually, there's a sign of being depressed when you sleep more, right? So if you're really excited, you don't really feel it as a painful thing to get up in the morning. Like, yes, I want to get up in the morning. I want to do that thing. And yes, and I quickly kind of summarize or because there are loads of good points that you made that I kind of want to back up almost, which is like I forgot now. Never mind. Forget it. Leave it till next time because I think we've run out of time anyway. So
Thanks for
yeah,
having me.
really good. Yeah, thank you. And I was kind of laughing because I can hear. Is that a cow or a sheep in the background? I can hear.
It's a lamb.
Lamb. Oh, lamb. Sorry, not a sheep, a lamb. Okay. All right. All right. Anyway, next time maybe we'll have a nicer background with the actual sheep there. But anyway, that is your farm, isn't it? But
Yeah,
just a,
wildflowers,
a, a
wildflowers. Thank
picture
you,
of it.
everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you. And I will end the stream here. But you can